Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Hello, everybody. We are coming to you live from my condo, as usual. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through and doing a recap about my recent visit to the Walt Disney Studios over in Burbank, California. But we're going to give people a few seconds here to hopefully hop on, join us, join in the fun. Hopefully, it's going to be fun. We're going to go through. We're going to be going through and sharing lots of pictures today. So, of the actual Walt Disney Studios, we're going to be doing lots of stories, lots of fun facts, lots of everything, along with some other goodies that we're going to be sharing. So, hopefully, it was such a good time. This is actually my third time at the Walt Disney Studios, and the first time was amazing. The second time was a little shorter, but it was still amazing. And then this time was like the longest time I felt like that we got to spend there. And so we're going to be going through. I took a lot of pictures. They did not let us do any video, but we did get some pictures, a lot of pictures. But before we get to all that, how's everyone doing? Is everyone doing good out there? It shows that we do have some people who are watching. No one is talking in the chat room yet. So I'll give you guys a few seconds out there to say, hey, howdy, hey. Or maybe not. And of course, we're going to be doing the merchandise that I purchased over there too. A lot of people have been asking about the hats, because we got some hats. We also got some goodies, which we're going to be going through. They'll probably actually, some of the stuff is going to be hanging in the background here. If you guys have never noticed, all the stuff that's in the background here is usually stuff that has happened throughout the history of the Wednesday show, or things that we've talked about. All kind of hang out up here. You have things like the People Mover, Annual Pass, lightsaber building, a little bit of everything. Oh wait, let's get this party started. No one is talking. I don't know if you're out there and you're trying to talk and it's not working, send me a message on Facebook or Instagram or text message or whatever to let me know, because we do have a lot of people that says that are watching, but no one's talking. So hopefully there's not any issues with that stuff right now. But we're going to start the 808th episode of there we go. Hola. We're going to start the 808th episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 808th episode of the Wednesday show. Today is February 12th, 2025, and I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today, we're going to be going through and doing a recap of my recent visit to the actual Walt Disney Studios. We're not talking about Disney's Hollywood Studios. We're talking about the actual Walt Disney Studios, where Walt Disney worked at. We're going to be showing pictures from his office. We're going to be showing pictures. We're going to do a lot of pictures today. I'm very excited to go through and do a recap of this, because I haven't really revisited this, and I haven't had too much time to actually think about this visit until recently, because life has just been chaotic. So this is my chance to go through and be chaotic with all of you. But of course, before we get to that, let's talk about our news for the week. First off, thank you everyone out there who's been joining us for our Saturday in the Park. If you don't already know, every single Saturday we do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. You never know where we're going to be, but I promise you we're always going to be coming to you live from Disney. I am not sure where we're going to be coming to you live from this week. This past week we were live over at the Epcot International Festival of the Arts, where we took a look at some of the hidden characters that are over there for the festival. But it's coming up Saturday. Things could be different. So just make sure you join us every single Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And of course, while we're talking about that, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe. Right now, our starting point is at 8,279 subscribers. As always, if this number goes up as the broadcast goes on, we will go into extra innings and answer more questions. Or, like I said, we've got a ton of pictures today. And I think tonight is going to be one of those nights that even if we do not hit the hour, we're probably going to be going over that hour, because we have so much to talk about when it comes to these studios. And of course, as always, tonight's episode is sponsored by the always amazing Patreon Pals. Patreon Pals. Let's talk about the studios. If you're one of our Patreon Pals out there in the chat room, give us an oh yeah. But thank you to the Patreon Pals out there for making tonight's episode possible. Okay, we have a lot to cover, so we're going to get right into this bad boy. Now, if you have joined us in the past, going all the way back to like our 12th episode, it was somewhere around the 12th episode. It was about 2 to 3 months after we started doing this broadcast or this podcast. We went to the Disney Studios with D23. My dad and I went in November of 2009. Now, after going to that initial one, and that was actually the very first time that they ever did studio tours with D23, it was amazing. It was mind-boggling. It was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. And I was like, I am just grateful that I've been to the Walt Disney Studios once. And if it never happens again, so be it. But at the same time, I always wanted to go back. So about 3 years later, I went back for the second time, this time with actually some people who are watching the show right here. We did a group tour of the Adventures by Disney trip in Southern California, and one of the stops was at the Walt Disney Studios, but mainly we went over there to go take a look at the archives, and we did a little bit of a studio tour, but we didn't do a full studio tour. It was cool, but we missed a lot of stuff. And then a few weeks ago, we were over in Disneyland. Actually, like 2 weeks ago today, we were in Disneyland, and I found out that D23 was doing studio tours once again. My friend Frank and I have talked about it multiple times about how one of these times when we're out there in Disneyland for these races, maybe, just maybe, we should go out there and check out these studios once again. And I said, let's do it. So I signed us up. We went out there Thursday, so 13 days ago, and we got my third tour of the studios. And in my opinion, this was the best tour of the Walt Disney Studios that I've ever had. Now, before we get into the actual studio tour, let's talk a little bit about how the studio tour goes through. So D23 is obviously the fan club, the official fan club for Disney fans, and they do these studio tours, like I said, starting back in 2009. Now, originally, it was a free tour. When my dad and I went, it was about a 2-hour tour. They took us into the archives. They took us to Legends Plaza. They took us through some of the buildings. They pointed out some of the sound stages. But at the same time, you could tell it was a new tour because the tour guides literally walked around with a book in their hand. In addition to that, we spent a lot more time at the archives than any of the other spots, mainly due to the fact that Disney legend and founder of the archives, Dave Smith, was there. So he was there to actually go through and explain different things to us that were in the archives. So this time around, it was a little bit different. We still met at the exact same spot that we met in the previous years, but this time around, we had a tour guide who had been doing the tours for about 5 years at that point, and she knew her stuff, and she was just as passionate about Disney as all of us are. So let's get to it. In order to do this tour, this was on January 30th, 2025. And as you can see there, this is the Walt Disney Studios. I was a guest. My name is Brent Dutch. We started off at the Hyperion Bungalow / Silver Lake, not to be confused with Silver Bells. Silver Bells. So a little bit of backstory about this studio before we actually get to it. Now, as we all know, the entire Disney company was founded back in 1923. And when the company was founded back in 1923, there was a lot of different things going on, mainly due to the fact that Disney Studio was just a very small little studio in a very small little building. But as time went on, they moved into a little bit bigger building, and that is where they animated the masterpiece known as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, with the profits of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they decided that they're going to build a brand new studio. And this studio would open up in 1940, and many different classic Disney films that we all know and love were created there. Parts of Pinocchio, parts of Fantasia, those were the first ones that were parts of, because part of them were starting to be worked on at the other studio, but they finished at this brand new studio. In addition to that, we had things like Bambi, Peter Pan, Cinderella, things all the way up to the Shaggy Dog, Oliver and Company, parts of Oliver and Company, not all of Oliver and Company, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and so many other classic live action films and other films. In addition to animated films and live action films, we also have so many different TV shows. Things as recent as things like Home Improvement or Boy Meets World, or I can only think of things that happened in the 1990s, to things earlier in the day like Zorro, the Mickey Mouse Club, and a ton of other things. So when all of these different things started to come into the area, we started to get more and more expansion in the lot, and with that more and more expansion in the lot, we had more and more fun coming around. So that takes us to our pictures of this evening. Let's take a look at all of the fun. Here, let's get rid of my face there. So once we got in there, we first got a chance. Let's see, is there a way to zoom in a little bit? I want to move this around here for myself. Okay. I don't think it's zooming in. Come on. Zoom in. No, don't go. Can you zoom in, please? No, it's not zooming in. Okay, so let's start us off here. I'm only going to start us off with this picture. This was a picture that I had no intention of taking a picture of. However, our tour guide insisted like 15 times. She's like, you have to take this picture. You have to take this picture. Now, a few of the things that I would like to point out in this picture is if you look over here, we do have these little Mickey Mouse things around here. And of course, obviously, this is a Mickey Mouse topiary. If you did watch my Instagram stories, you might see this little area back here. This is where the restroom was. This is where I did my Instagram story talking about how there was a person in the stall, and I'm pretty sure it was probably Bob Iger, even though it most likely was not Bob Iger whatsoever. So I'm just going to move this over just a little bit for my sake. It makes no difference on your guys' sake at all. You guys are just seeing the same thing. So the whole tour started over at a bungalow. I think the bungalow may be the only thing that I did not take a picture of. But the bungalow was actually part of the original studio. They did move a few different buildings from the original studio over to this studio as well. But with the profits of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they had a brand new opportunity to build a brand new studio. Now, like I said, one of the first projects that was going to be worked on there was things like Pinocchio and Fantasia, which brings us over here to the Sherman Brothers stage. Now, the Sherman Brothers stage is like the first building that you can actually see when you walk into the studio. And you know what? To make things a little bit better here, I do have a map that they had in the gift shop of the studio. It's like, are these free? And they're like, yeah, if you want one, take one. So this is the exact studio map. We'll kind of keep on going back here. We met here at the bungalow. Right over here is, no, right here. Stage A. That is going to be the picture that we were looking at right here. This is the Sherman Brothers studio stage. Now, the Sherman Brothers studio stage has been used for many, many things throughout the years, but one of the first things that they actually worked on was the idea of Fantasia. Now, in here, they actually created the very first ever surround sound system. So if you've ever gone to a movie, which I assume most of you have probably gone to a movie at some point in your life, when you go into the movie, most likely you have experienced the surround sound effect. This had never been done before Fantasia. And for Fantasia, they decided to create a brand new stereo sound, which was called Fantasound. And Fantasound was actually originated inside of this building, the Sherman Brothers stage. Now, most of the music mixing that you can find in different movies for Disney were done in this room. Also, to kind of like talk a little bit more, if you ever want to go really like fully deep and look at different things inside of the studio, there is a great movie called The Reluctant Dragon that came out back in the 1940s. In The Reluctant Dragon, what they did was Walt Disney had this idea of so many people asking him for tours of the studio, like Warner Brothers did, or Universal did, or all these other different things did. And Walt said, I just don't want to have it so people are just wandering around the studio a lot. So what he decided to do is create a movie called The Reluctant Dragon, where there was this actor who came up with this idea of creating a book that would be transported perfectly into film, and he decided to bring it to the Walt Disney Studio lot. While he was going through the Walt Disney Studios, he kind of got an entire tour of the studios and allowed us to go through and do the tour as well. Now, this is going to be one of the spots that you can actually find inside the film, and inside that area, you could also have it so you could see where they were going through and making all the different sounds specifically for the different short cartoons. In addition to the Sherman Brothers stage, if you've ever seen the movie Saving Mr. Banks, this is actually going to be the building right here that at the start of the film you see P.L. Travers come up to. This is actually the door that she opens up, and the Sherman Brothers actually greet her at the Sherman Brothers stage. In addition to that, over here we do have the little history of the Sherman Brothers stage. I know this is kind of difficult to see, and I'm trying to zoom it in right now, but unfortunately it is not letting me zoom it in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read it to you from my phone because that's actually we're going to see a little bit better. So it says Soundstage A was constructed in the summer of 1939 for the orchestra recording. Because of the studio's location near the Burbank Airport, special priority was given to soundproofing the building with state-of-the-art acoustics, including a building within a building design for noise reduction. As an orchestra stage, A accommodated up to 68 musicians. During the years from 1959 to 1986, nearly all of the music for Disney films was recorded here. In the early years, Stage A housed the iron pencil console originally designed for Fantasia. In 1977, Pete's Dragon tested a new digital recording process, and 2 years later, Black Hole was the first film to be fully recorded on 1-inch digital tape. Other notable projects scored on Stage A include Mary Poppins, The Happiest Millionaire, Ben and Me, Sleeping Beauty, and The Living Desert. The Mickey Mouse Club also did much of their re-recording work on Stage A. In 1987, A was converted to a motion picture re-recording stage, and in 1999, a major technical and architectural renovation was completed to provide the latest in technology for motion picture recording. Okay, so then if we go to our next picture here, then you can see that this actually is the Sherman Brothers Stage A, and here we have the signatures of Richard Sherman and Robert Sherman, of course, the famous musicians that would create many songs, including things from Mary Poppins, The Enchanted Tiki Room, Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, and so many other things. Right around the corner there, we do have the corner of Dopey Drive and Mickey Avenue, and then, of course, you can see there, it does say Pluto's Corner there. This prop, yes, it is a prop. This prop was actually created specifically for the film that I talked about earlier, which is the Reluctant Dragon. Before that, this did not exist. It was not there. It was specifically put there for this movie, and then they just liked it, so they decided to keep it. Now, one of the really interesting things about this sign, again, we're going to try to zoom in, but I just don't think, for some reason, it's not letting me zoom in here today. Can you zoom in this way? No. It's not letting me zoom in. Okay. But if you look at the sign, all the different things that are actually found on the sign, on the left-hand side, it says animation, multiplane, ink and paint. On the right-hand side, it says in between special effects and layout department. The signs are actually not pointing at the right things at all. Again, it was supposed to just simply be a movie prop. We did get a picture of Frank and I over there at the thing. And then in addition to that, I think she took a few pictures here, so just bear with me here. She's like, this is a really nice camera. If you look on the left-hand side here, you do have that fire hydrant, and it says Pluto's Corner. And one of my favorite little details is if you look here, there are 3 footprints in front of the fire hydrant because it's a fire hydrant and Pluto's a dog. Just think about it. Which to me, it cracks me up. But there again, we have the Mickey Avenue sign. Our next building that we went to is a very actual historical building, and this is going to be the actual animation building. This is going to be the actual building that things like the Three Caballeros was animated in, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, so many classic Disney films were actually animated inside this film. And while we go through the tour from here on out, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the process of how animated movies are made, because the studio was originally done specifically to use as an animated movie stage. And then eventually we got into live action back in the late 1940s. And more specifically, we had our first full-length animated film, which would come out in the early 1950s, which would be Treasure Island. Right across the area from the animation building, we have our final project would be where the theater is. Now, obviously, we have the poster there for Moana 2. In this theater, this is going to be not used too often these days. D23 does do several different special effects, or not special effects, special events that are found at this stage. So if you are part of the D23 thing and you are in Burbank at any time, sometimes you could get previews for films in this specific area or in this specific theater. Back in the day, this theater was actually created mainly for the idea of figuring out how to look at different films with dailies. Now, dailies are things that they would do for animation way back in the day. They still do it today. But what they would do is after they go through and have it till they had the animated process, they would go to the theater and they would show these videos to Walt, and Walt would figure out what was working, what wasn't working, what needed to be changed, and so on and so forth. So that is where this theater was going to be. Now, we would go around that back into the animation building where history was made. Now, this is just going to be a little diorama that can be found on one of the walls. This little diorama that can be found here is kind of going through the entire animation process. It's kind of tough to see. This is actually my one of my favorite parts of the tour was Frank at this point took out his camera and started recording instead of taking pictures because they told us no recording, and he got yelled at. So this is my favorite part of the tour. So going through, and you can kind of see the entire thing. We got Mickey Mouse and Professor Ludwig von Drake there. And then underneath it does say like things like film editor. It's kind of tough to see on that thing, but it says here you see under the microscope of animators pencil test, the film editor slices all the pieces together, blah, 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 blah. And it essentially goes through exactly how these movies were created until eventually we get to our last thing where we actually have the screening taking place. It's kind of tough to see on that picture, but all the different people there, we have one human and then Mickey Mouse along with Goofy, the Seven Dwarfs, Professor Ludwig von Drake. We also have Pluto, Chip and Dale, and Jiminy Cricket out there as well. Going up to the second floor, we had a few different displays of different sound mixing that had happened in this building, which were more recent films. Things like the live action Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which just came out a few years ago. We also had things like Peter Pan and Wendy, which was a movie that came out directly on to Disney Plus. We also had Quiz Lady, which came out on Hulu. And then we would get to more of the meat and potatoes of this entire tour. So before we get to those meat and potatoes, let's talk a little bit about this. So this is going to be the part where I got very emotional. So when you get up to the third floor, and we've skipped a lot of the stuff. I don't have pictures of everything that we kind of went through. But when we get to the third floor, during my first tour, they kind of went through the history of Walt's office with us, but we were not able to go to Walt's office because it really wasn't Walt's office anymore. So after Walt Disney passed away, his office kind of sat untouched for quite some time. They would have it so the custodian staff would still go in there, they would clean, and then they would leave. And eventually what would happen is there was a man named Dave Smith. Dave Smith's been on this podcast before. Dave Smith's been he was a correspondent, or not correspondent, but he was always willing to listen to all of my questions throughout the years about anything and everything Disney. If you have read any of my books, there is a chance that there's some sort of question that I had to write to Dave Smith at some point or another. Said, hey, can you clarify X, Y, and Z? Dave Smith came up with this idea of creating a Walt Disney Archives. And he pitched the idea to Walt's brother, Roy, and said, hey, I want to have it so there's a way for us to preserve all this stuff that is in the Disney company, because there's a lot of stuff in the Disney company, and you guys need to preserve it in some way, shape, or form. And he said, I like that idea. And the very first thing he did was he actually went to the Walt Disney Studios and he documented all of Walt Disney's actual studio, which is crazy, or his actual office, which is an absolutely crazy thing because no one had gone into Walt's office, with the exception of like the cleaning crew, for years after Walt's death. Like everything just kind of sat there and it was vacant and it was just empty. So he would go in and he would document the entire thing. He took pictures of everything. He had things of, this is where this is, this is where this is, this is where this, like the last script he ever read is on this. And so he would kind of go through, we're going to skip this picture for a second here. He would kind of go through and, I went too soon. But eventually what would happen is other people started to come in. And after they took all of Walt's stuff out, they preserved it in the archives. They had it so other people started to use those offices. Now, as time would go on, more and more people would use the offices until eventually it was not Walt's office anymore. It was just completely different people. The next person who would use it would be Ron Miller, who was actually Walt's son-in-law. He was married to one of Walt's daughters, and he was also the head of the Disney Studios after Roy passed away. Now, Ron Miller would use it and have it so he would put a skylight in and have it so he made some changes, but overall it still kind of had the feeling of Walt Disney being there, but at the same time it was also a completely brand new office. After he stepped away from the company, other people would go through, and then as those people stepped away, other people would come through, and then eventually it was just other people completely unrelated to Walt Disney in any way, shape, and form who would be in this office. Eventually, because they still had all the stuff preserved in the Walt Disney Archives, what would happen is they would actually make a display of part of his office over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, in 2001, they had it so a brand new display opened up in Disney's Hollywood Studios called Walt Disney. Now it's called Walt Disney Presents, but at that time it was just called One Man Stream. Now it's called Walt Disney Presents One Man Stream. What they would eventually do is they would put part of Walt's office in a display there, and it would be behind glass so everyone could look at it, but they could never actually step inside of it. And as the years went on, back in like the mid 2010s, eventually someone said, you know what, we should actually bring Walt's office back to where it actually belongs. And they said, that's a great idea. So they kicked the person out of the office. Well, there's someone actually in the office anymore, but they had it so the office was vacant. They decided, you know what, this is going to be our perfect opportunity. Let's put Walt's office back in the exact same way, shape, and form that it was when he passed away. So when I went to the studios in 2009, this was not there. They actually planned out that window up there is Walt Disney's office. It's used by so-and-so now, but nothing, it's just some average Joe, not some average Joe, but still, just some random guy up there who had that office. When I went in 2012, they also pointed out the window. They said, oh, that office right there, that's Walt Disney's office. Again, we couldn't go in there because it was just some random person's office. Now, since they brought these tours back, one of the things that I've been saying is I want to go inside of Walt's office. And a few months ago, when we were out there for a Disneyland race, I said it'd be really cool to do it. But at that point, they were actually doing some work on Walt's office. And so I said, nope, we can't do it now. And this was going to be our perfect opportunity to go check out the office. So right before you enter into the office, we have a setup of what one of the old animators' offices would look like. So there we have an animator's desk along with the table. As you can see in the back wall there, we do have a picture of Pinocchio. And then going from here, we would go down a little hallway, and into that hallway, we would actually enter into what would be essentially the waiting area for Walt's office. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Saving Mr. Banks, you probably remember the scenes where P.L. Travers was there, and she was like just storming right past the secretary's desk. This is a complete accurate, like that was completely accurate compared to what it was like in the movie. So when you first walk into that area, we've got things like a Goofy, that's a Goofy statue with him holding on to two things. Now, Walt Disney has many, many awards. So he had all these different awards that were going to be on display there. Some of them are fake. For instance, if you take a look at the very top of that shelf, you can find the Oscar with the Oscar and the 7 Oscars that was given to Walt Disney by Shirley Temple for the creation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is actually not the real one. The real one is actually found in San Francisco at the Walt Disney Family Museum. However, a lot of the other trophies they can find in the display case are actual trophies or actual awards. Now, going back to the desk right here, this is the desk that was used by one of Walt Disney's secretaries. And if you take a look at the desk there, we do have a few different things, including this note right here. Now, the note here would actually be from Walt Disney's last actual day in the office. So this would be Friday, October 28th, 1966. It'd be shortly after this, not even shortly after this, it'd be the weekend after this that Walt Disney would actually be admitted to the hospital, where he would be staying in and out of for the next month and a half of his life until he would sadly pass away right across the street from the actual Walt Disney Studios. So going from this room, we enter into the next room. And as you guys know, I'm a massive Disney fan. I am a huge Walt Disney fan. And walking into this next room was one of the most surreal moments of my life. It was the only time of this tour where I got a little misty-eyed because I was like, holy cow, I'm in Walt Disney's office. And it was just mind-boggling. So this right here, oh no, that not right there. This right here is Walt Disney's desk as he left it the day before, or right before he would leave it, and would unfortunately pass away shortly after. So on the desk, we've got multiple things. We've got this bell that was given to him. On the back wall there, we can find 4 different pictures. 2 of them in the middle are actual photographs of his daughters. And then the other 2 are drawings of his daughters that were actually done by famous artist Norman Rockwell. On the back wall there, we've got all those different little miniature items. Those are actual miniatures that have been given to Walt Disney throughout the years. Most of them are just labeled as things that were given to him by friend. And I think one of the coolest things is going to be that airplane that is found on the desk. This is an actual airplane an airplane model that Walt Disney himself built in preparation for what he thought was going to be the plane that was going to travel him from Disneyland to Walt Disney World while creating the Florida project. On the other side of the room, right behind you, we've got this nice little sitting area. Ooh. Now, in this sitting area, again, we have multiple different things. The first one is closest to us on that table right here is a lady statue from Lady and the Tramp. We also have this little book right back here, which is going to be like a Walt Disney comic book. Again, these are going to be the actual things that Walt Disney would have left behind right before he passed away. Now, looking at those two items, the desk and this table here, was really cool. But the thing that really got me was the piano. Now, we know the story about the piano. And if you guys don't, here's a little abridged version of it. This piano would be the actual piano that Richard Sherman would come in, along with Robert Sherman. And they would come in every single Friday, or almost every Friday, and talk to Walt. And Walt would have it so he would unwind, he would open up a drink, he would smoke his cigar, and he would look at them and say, play it. And what they would play every single time would be Feed the Birds from Mary Poppins. It was considered Walt Disney's favorite song of all time. And this piano would eventually only be able to be played by two people, and two people only. One of them would be Richard Sherman, who unfortunately did pass away last year. And the other one is the only person that can still play it, and that is actually the piano tuner. And they said they do plan on having it so the piano tuner will still come in to tune the piano so it'd still be at perfect shape in case Richard Sherman somehow comes back and wants to play it for Walt. Now, on the actual piano there, we've got several different songs there. Now, these songs were placed there as representatives of the most popular songs that the Sherman Brothers would have played for Walt Disney. They have things like the Strummin' Song, which was sung by Annette Funicello. In addition to that, we have Babes in Toyland, which was not from the Sherman Brothers, but it was done just before the Sherman Brothers. And then on top of that, if you take a look on the left-hand side here, this would be a little mouse car statue. Now, the mouse car statue was a statue that Walt Disney, along with members of the staff and Roy Disney, would actually give different people, kind of like an Oscar, for different contributions that they had done with the entire company. On the right-hand side, this is actually The Little Mermaid. And I know what you're thinking, but The Little Mermaid came out in 1989, and Walt Disney would pass away in 1966. Yes, you are 100% correct. However, Hans Christian Andersen was a very famous imagination maker from the 1800s, and a lot of people always said that Walt Disney reminded them of him in the future. So a lot of people would give him things that represented his work, including The Little Mermaid. So when you're actually in this room, there are several different things several different sections that you can find Little Mermaid statues, because so many people gifted him with Little Mermaid statues, which I think is kind of funny. A little closer look at his desk. I'm going to get a drink real quick here. First off, we got an ashtray, because obviously Walt Disney was a smoker. Over here, we do have a picture of Walt Disney. Walt Disney would sign autographs, and he would actually send them out to different fans. If you ever saw him inside of the park, he would not have it so he would sign autographs there, because otherwise he would be swamped down all day. So what he would do is he would give different people a card saying, hey, send this card in, and I will send you an autograph back. And he actually was true to his word about that. In addition to that, going back to that table on the other side here, here we just have like the little display thing. We've got a little bit closer look at the Sherman Brothers piano there. And then this is actually going to be the famous bird that we've heard so much about throughout the years. This is going to be the bird that actually inspired audio animatronics. Now, the Disney family did purchase two birds during the trip. One of them sits in Walt's office. The other one actually can be found over at the Walt Disney Archives. In addition to the bird, behind the piano, we've got a massive bookcase. Now, they said Walt Disney most likely did read every single book on this bookcase at one point or another. But if you go through there and take a closer look at some of the books there, none of them are a closer look at the Animal Kingdom's Dinoland USA, because that book was not around when Walt Disney was alive. But we do have a lot of different books that are very, very cool details that kind of tell the story of what would eventually happen with Walt Disney. One of the ones that is over here is actually going to be the Mary Poppins book that Walt Disney read with his daughters that would eventually inspire the movie Mary Poppins, where the whole craziness one is. It's actually going to be this book right here. A few books over, this one right here. Nope, this one right here is going to be a book about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was a very famous actor at the time, and he actually was going to be the person who helped open up the monorail over in Disneyland. If you look below that, we've got things like Tugboat, which would help inspire some different Disney shorts. And then going on to our next picture here, we do have several more books there. For some reason during the tour, if you guys join us for our live feed from Disneyland 2 weeks ago today, we were in the Storybook Canal boats. And while we were in the Storybook Canal boats, Frank and I were kind of going through and we were talking one-on-one with each other about this music going on in the background. I was like, I'll give you $1 if you name the movie and the song that is playing right now. And the movie and the song was Darby O'Gill and Little People, and She Is My Dear, My Darling One, and Frank didn't know it. And so while we're walking through the one hallway, there was a poster for Darby O'Gill and Little People, and the tour guide freaked out because no one knows Darby O'Gill and Little People except for obviously me. And so while we were there at this bookcase, she was like, you see this book right here? This is actually Darby O'Gill and Little People. And so she was like completely freaking out because anytime we had any experience with Darby O'Gill and Little People, she would have to point it out to me. So that is going to be Darby O'Gill and Little People right there. My next picture is here. That's going to be another picture of the just a little desk and the seating area there. And then we go to Walt's next office. Now, the first office that we're in here, this is going to be like the more formal office. This is going to be the area where obviously we have the piano, where different big executives would meet. But then if Walt wanted to have it so he had another area that he could kind of entertain people when he went to, you would go into the next office. The next office had more of the future in mind. So our first thing we have is this map of Disneyland. This is an actual aerial map of Disneyland from around the time right when Walt Disney would have been passing away. Now, a few different things that you may notice on this map right away is up here, there is no Small World. So that kind of gives you an idea of around. It's a little around the time of the 1964 World's Fair, but it hasn't gotten to the point where Small World has actually come back. If you look down this way, we do have plans for the Haunted Mansion, and it says Haunted Mansion, featuring the future home of 1001 ghosts, because at that point they hadn't settled on the idea of 999 happy haunts. And then this sign right here points up the construction that's going on here, which would be the construction for New Orleans Square. Of course, that not being open yet either. These pictures right down here are the pictures of the actual inside part of Walt Disney's plane that he had used to go out to Florida, not the plane that we could find in the other office. Those are going to be two completely different things. In addition to that, let's go to the next picture because I think it's be easier for us to see. In addition to that, we do have pictures of Ed Wynn. Ed Wynn was in several different Disney films, including Mary Poppins, where he was Uncle Albert. I love to laugh. Ha, 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 ha. Walt Disney did consider Ed Wynn to be his good luck charm, and he was found in many different Disney films. He was also the voice of the Mad Hatter and so many others. He was in several different things. Just to the left of that, we do have a picture of Abraham Lincoln found in Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. And then the other one back here we're going to get to in just a few minutes here because I think we got a closer up picture. Otherwise, we're going to have to come back to it. This is going to be his office desk in the informal office. This one's going to have several different really cool details. If this one looks familiar to you, it should. This is going to be mainly the things that you could find inside of the display case over at Disney's Hollywood Studios when that was around. First off, on the back section here, we do have multiple scripts. These are the actual scripts for actual Disney films, mainly live action films. If you take a look down here at the ground, this is going to be a luggage suitcase. This luggage suitcase, the main reason I took it is on my side. If you zoom in right down to the bottom, it does say W.E.D. for Walter E. Disney. This is or Elias Disney. This is going to be the actual suitcase used by Walt Disney. To the right of that, we do have this couch. Now, the couch is going to be kind of an informal area. The desk that you could find in the previous pictures, let's go back here just for a second. This desk was more portable than the last one. So what they would do is they would actually slide it over against the other area. So if they were trying to have it so it was more informal of a meeting, they could actually go through and have it so things were done over there. Over here, we've got a few different really cool things. Another plane, but this is going to be the plane that could actually be found that took Walt Disney from California to Florida while planning in Walt Disney World. If you ever did the studio backlot tour over at Disney's Hollywood Studios, you used to be able to see the mouse, as they called it. This is the actual plane model of that mouse. Here we have a picture of Walt Disney along with his brother Roy, but one of the coolest parts of this entire thing is going to be this right here. If that looks kind of familiar to you, well, it should if you've ever been to Walt Disney World, because that is the actual future plans of the Walt Disney World Resort. In addition to that, here we have more of that plans of Disneyland, but this middle section right here is going to be the idea of what could be expanded with the studio, along with plans for a potential Mickey Mouse park, just kind of going back to Walt's original roots. There is going to be another picture of that desk area. I think we've got another picture of the desk area. But in the back corner here, you can see this group of books. I took a picture that was very zoomed in. So you can see this book that's called The Heart of Our Cities, the book The Heart of Our Cities, which I desperately want to read now after hearing it. Walt Disney read this book, and when he read this book, it gave him the idea of a little project that was called Epcot. So this is actually the inspiration of Epcot, and now I want to go and read this book because I want to find out exactly what happened and how he was inspired by Epcot with that. There is another picture of the future plans of Walt Disney World. That is the picture of Disneyland. And then behind me in these pictures is a area that it's like a little kitchenette. It looks like a wall, and then they open up the walls, and there he has a lot of different things that he can go through and entertain people with. Now, Walt Disney loved V8 vegetable juice, so that's why you can find the V8 at the top there. In addition to that, he loved chili, so this is going to be just a row of chili. And then down here, he also enjoyed Spam, so there's Spam there too, and then things like Jell-O. All of these glasses right here are actually personalized glasses by Walt Disney. These are the actual glasses that would have been used by Walt Disney. And if we go to our next picture here, you can see that on here we actually have the initials of Walter Elias Disney written on every single one of the glasses. After we exited through that area, we went into another room, which would have been used by another one of his secretaries. This is going to be just a few of the different things that Walt Disney owned personally. So these are going to be different like membership cards that are found there. In addition to that, we have this little display on the wall. This display features several different pictures of what would occur around the Walt Disney Studios when he first moved out there. This picture, oops, lopsided, but if you tilt your head, you can see the names Walt Disney and Roy Disney there. These are going to be the actual name plates that were found on Walt Disney's desk and Roy Disney's desk as well. This would also be one of the original chairs and tables that used to be found in his office as well. And then we've got some construction photos of the actual studios. Now, after going through all of that, they would go through and they would give us a few different things, including this pin, which says Studio Tour. And then we would also get our own little Mousester and Duckster statues also in pin form there. Now, D23 usually does give a gift out every single time you do a tour or one of these things. So we went through and we had that. This is going to be also a little pamphlet that they gave us going through the entire Walt Disney office. So from there, we went to the next part, which I think is another part that's extremely cool, which is going to be Legends Plaza. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Disney Legend started back in the 1980s. The very first Disney Legend was given to Fred Murray, who went to my college. Thank you very much. The two people were the two most notable graduates. That's true. But Disney Legends was a ceremony that was being held every year, and then eventually became every other year when the D23 Expo started. And it's given to people who have made profound effects on the entire Disney company. It's not just given to actors or actresses or directors or animators, but it's given to everyone. Anyone who's made a profound impact on the company in some way, shape, or form has the opportunity to go through and earn this. So when you go down to Legends Plaza, first off, we have the partner statue, which we all know and love if you've ever gone to Magic Kingdom or Disneyland or Disneyland Paris. All three of these parks do have the Disney Legends thing here. But while we go through here, we do have that as the centerpiece, but all around the area, we're going to have many, many, many different handprints of different Disney legends. I wanted to take pictures of every single one of them. Obviously, I did not have the time to go through and take pictures of every single one of them. But here we have people like Adriana Casalati, who was a voice of animation. We also have Thurl Ravenscroft, who can be found in things like, what's it called? The Haunted Mansion. I don't know. I couldn't figure out Haunted Mansion. We also have like Robert Stevenson on the bottom left here. Robert Stevenson, if you've seen movies like Swiss Family Robinson, he was the director for that. To the right of him, we have David Tomlinson, who of course was in movies like Mary Poppins. He was the father in that. He was also in The Love Bug. He was Mr. Thorndyke. Just above him, we have Ken Anakin. Ken Anakin would go through and do several different directing projects for Disney throughout the years. And then on the left-hand side, we have Tyrus Wong. Tyrus Wong would be an animator as well. Going into our next pictures, we're not going to go through every single person here, but we're going to go through quite a few. I was very excited because this section was people who I had actually seen get their handprints. So I saw Robin Williams' legend ceremony at one of the D23s. I also saw Leota Toombs. She is the animator slash Imagineer, and she is actually the voice and the head of Madame Leota. And well, she's the face inspiration for Madame Leota in the Haunted Mansion. She's also the voice of Little Leota in the Haunted Mansion. Down at the bottom here, we have Tony Anselmo, the voice of Donald Duck. We also have Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy. Around here, we also have Carrie Fisher, top left. We have Mark Hamill and George Lucas, obviously all from Star Wars and what have you. Moving on to our next one here, we've got other people like Karen Dotrice and Matthew Garber, who are Jane and Michael Banks from Mary Poppins. We also have the back picture. There's a few pictures here that I'm probably going to be posting after the show. I've been holding off on posting some of these, and I'm probably going to post it tonight on Instagram and my Facebook, my personal Facebook. But this is going to be the backside of the partner statue, which I think is pretty cool. There's a picture of my face. And then that building that's directly behind me is actually going to be the main corporate headquarters of the entire Walt Disney Company. So that is going to be where people like Bob Iger and Josh DeMero and so many other people actually had their offices at. Continue through here, we have a few other people like Lillian Disney on the top left and Edna Disney, that's on the top right. Those are going to be the wives of Walt Disney and Roy. This is also going to be the actual statue, but a much larger version of the statue that is given to the Disney Legends when they win the award. This is a much cooler picture of it. So there you go. I had to edit Frank out of this one. So goodbye, Frank. You're dead. Or maybe it's not that one. This is going to be the actual building here. One of the cool things about the architecture of this building is they wanted to have it so it inspired, or it gave off the idea that it is not just one person, but multiple people who help build the company up. And then continuing on here, we do have a few more people, including Mark Davis, Ward Kimball, Frank Thomas, and Ollie Johnson. Those are going to be four of the classic animators from back in the day. In addition to that, I had to get pictures of a few of these, including Haley Mills on the bottom left here, obviously from Pollyanna. There is a picture of the Sharing the Magic statue, which can be found over at Magic Kingdom. And then this is my handprint on Dean Jones' handprint. Dean Jones is, he played the character of Jim Douglas in The Love Bug. So he drove Herbie, and I drive Herbie. So I figured, well, we'll have two people who drive Herbie together. There's another picture of the partner statue and stuff. All right, and then we go over to the Frank G. Wells building. The Frank G. Wells building would be the building where This is going to be the actual main headquarters of the Walt Disney Archives. They're going to be found in the very back corner of the entire studio lot. Frank G. Wells was going to be the financial genius that went with Michael Eisner. Obviously, Michael Eisner would be the CEO of Disney back in the late 1980s, all the way through the mid 2000s. And Frank G. Wells was his right hand man. So, of course, they named the building after him. When we got in here, this is going to be the actual Walt Disney Archives. This is going to be one of the original desks of Walt Disney before they actually moved over to this lot. And then moving on from there, we've got some of the plans of the actual Walt Disney Studios. There's going to be some of the blueprints there. We also have a director's chair for Walt Disney that can be found on several different film sets. There is going to be the actual sign for the Walt Disney Archives. Here we've got a statue of Alice. This would be found over in Disneyland back when around the time when the Alice in Wonderland ride would have opened up. In addition to this, we do have this really cool drawing here. Now, this drawing would be a drawing done by by Ward Kimball, and he had created a picture of the Disney studio lot from his memory. So that is actually what that picture is there. The top one here, the Western Union thing, is probably one of the most historic things that you can ever see in person. And I was blown away when I saw this. This is the actual telegram that Walt Disney would have sent to Roy Disney when he found out that he lost Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. So it would have been shortly right after the death of Oswald and right before the birth of Mickey Mouse. So extremely historic telegraph right there, whatever you want to call it. In addition to that, this is going to be the actual contract for Walt Disney making the creation of Mickey Mouse. Or I'm sorry, no, not Mickey Mouse. This would be the creation of Mickey Mouse. No, I'm sorry, not Mickey Mouse. The Alice comedies. Haha, I look at my notes. The Alice comedies. So when they actually started making the Alice comedies, this would actually be the official document that pretty much founded the entire Walt Disney Studios. So if you actually look at the very top there, it does have the date of 1923 written on it. This is going to be a bust of Walt Disney himself. This was actually given to Walt Disney back in 1943. He was not a fan. We also have some miniatures up there on the top. On the bottom there, we do have some things from the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, some different models there. In addition to this, these are all going to be Bernie Matheson's awards that were given to him throughout the years. So if you did not know, he was an animator with the Disney Company for years and years and years. And if you ever watched the short cartoon Once Upon a Studio, you see a man at the start of the film talking to a young lady, and he says, "Oh, if these walls could talk." That is actually Bernie, and Bernie worked with the studio for, as you can see here, 70 years. Now, Disney does give these little plaques and little statues to different cast members every single time they hit a milestone landmark, whether it's 15, 20, 25, 30, and then I think it goes 35, 40, 45, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Bernie is the only person who's ever gone to 70. So when he hit 70, they asked him what characters he wanted to have on there, and he said Winnie the Pooh. So he got Winnie the Pooh. Going on over here, we do have this little history of the entire Walt Disney Company is on the top part there. And then we have a display of Donald Duck cartoons. And then here is a closer look at that telegram. It says, "Leaving tonight, stopping over KC, arrive home Sunday morning, 7:30. Don't worry, everything okay. We'll give details when arrive. Walt." So history, just right there, absolute history. This is going to be a closer look at the picture of the Walt Disney Studios. And then there's going to be the multi-plane camera, which we've talked about multiple times throughout multiple times throughout the years. But this would be actually how they would make the diverse look of animated movies. So it had like that more three-dimensional case. In addition to the Walt Disney Archives, they have many different things in here, including the original. This is the actual original Iron Man suit from the first Iron Man. This is the one that Tony Stark would have used to break out of the caves. They have it so one whole floor is mainly just Marvel. So that we have Iron Man there. If you look back here, it's kind of tough to see, but we've got Black Widow right here. We've got Black Panther right here. And it's kind of tough to see who else is up there. Oh, this is Ultron right here. And can I see anyone else? Not really. But this entire thing, oh, this is Captain America right here. This is going to be the actual spot where they remix different soundtracks, or I'm sorry, not when they re-voice dub different things for different Marvel movies. So if you've ever watched a Marvel movie, if they film something and it doesn't work out the first time when they're actually filming it, and they need to dub over it, they'll actually have it so the different actors will come here to the studio to go through and dub over it. Behind me on this picture is this area right here. This is going to actually be the actual Teen Choice Award that was given to the Marvel Studios when they won an award for a Marvel movie. Not sure which one. And then on the left-hand side here, this is a end of a bookcase that goes all the way over here. And on there, they said they have literally every single Marvel comic ever created. So that way, if the people who are working at Marvel Studios ever need inspiration, they can go there. So really, really cool. That's part of the archives. In addition to this, we do have a few other things that are found here. These are going to be some of the name tags worn by Walt Disney and Roy Disney over at Disneyland when they would actually be going over to Disneyland. We have the blocks from Mary Poppins. We also have it so down here, these are going to be the stop motion characters that we found in the movie The Parent Trap. We also have a book that actually was created because of the movie Pollyanna. Pollyanna was actually based off of a book, but this is a book that's based off the movie that's based off of a book. So, yeah. Over here, this is actually something that you can find over in Disney's Hollywood Studios still to this day. This is going to be the invitation to the world premiere of Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins did debut at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. So if you ever go to Disney's Hollywood Studios, they also have a Grauman's Chinese Theater. And there's a window on the left-hand side of it and a window on the right-hand side of it. One of the windows has an invitation to Mary Poppins, which can be this one right here. And then the other window has an invitation for the Jungle Book, which also debuted at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. So that is going to be what that is right there. We also have this little suitcase. This is going to be for Babes in Toyland. And then continuing on to our next one here, this is going to be the actual suitcase of Roy O. Disney, which I think is pretty cool. Exiting out of that area, we do have it so there are more of these little, I don't know, what do you call them? But, little metal things. But I like the one that has it so it's Mickey and Minnie together. It made me smile. Next up, we have the inking and painting department. This is going to be where they actually would go through and ink and paint all of the different short cartoons way back in the day and the movies way back in the day, all the way up until the 1960s when we had 101 Dalmatians come out. This is going to be primarily a women's work area because at the start they thought that only women could see colors really well. Then eventually it became a mainly male-centric area, and the females started taking over the male-centric areas in the studio. So they're like, it's kind of weird that as time went on, they kind of switched things. They had some really cool displays in here, though, of the different color displays of the different films. So here, obviously, we have Snow White, and then you can see like the colors that they use in Snow White on the back wall there. We also had a few of the different scraping things they would use, and then some actual cells from things like Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. We also have the Cheshire Cat there, again, with some of the paintings that, or the colors that would have been used. We have a little color display of the film's colors that would have been used for that one too. We have the Jungle Book there. The next one, I took a picture mainly because it's Evan Rood from the movie The Rescuers, and I love The Rescuers. The next one down there is also The Rescuers Down Under, which I also love The Rescuers Down Under. Then we have Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Again, more of that color testing thing there. And then after that, we have this really cool stamp collection. I just mainly took a picture because I thought that was a really cool stamp collection, and I wish I had it. On the back side of it, we do also have this really cool display of the stamps. The next room, this is going to be just one small little sampling of the ink and paint department. So Disney has thousands of colors that they use in their films. And as you can see on the back walls here, we have all these different paint displays. Those are just a lot of the different paints that they had used in the films. We continued going around the studio. We went over by the world famous Walt Disney Company water tower. Now, one of the things that we did not talk about on the tour, but it's actually one of my favorite stories about the water tower, is when Walt Disney was on his deathbed, literally right across the street at the hospital, he could see this water tower from his window, and he pointed out to them that it looked awful and that they needed to clean it more often. So they do clean this quite regularly because it was one of Walt Disney's last wishes. Here we started to get towards more of the stages for the different things. This would be the actual stage where 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was filmed at. So this is going to be actually, they had a massive water tank in there. There we have, again, the water tower. We're going to have a few water tower pictures if I remember correctly. Then we have the shorts building. This is going to be where most of the shorts were actually finalized at. So they would go through the animation building, they go through the ink and paint thing, and then they would actually be brought over here to the shorts building where they would be completed at. And then across the way, we would have the cutting building, which is where the final cuts for those films would be made. Our next studio over here would be where Mary Poppins was actually filmed. So this is going to actually be known as the Mary Poppins stage, or the Julie Andrews stage, I should say. Julie Andrews filmed Mary Poppins here. She also filmed The Princess Diaries here too, and The Princess Diaries too. So, then we have over here stage two. Stage two would be spots where we had things like the Mickey Mouse Club were filmed, and several other famous things there as well. And then finally, stage four off in the distance, again, because the lady was like so thrilled about me knowing who Darby O'Gill and Little People were. She was like, "That's where Darby O'Gill and Little People were." I was like, "Thank you." And then our final pictures here. Oh no, that's not our final pictures. That's the ending of my video. That is the last picture I actually have of the entire tour. Yeah. So that is our little walkthrough of the studio tour. Start throwing your questions to the comments. We will go into a few extra innings here. I don't even know what our subscriber count's at. Did we go up at all? Because if we went up at all, then you guys earned it. If not, you guys are just getting some. Yeah, you're just getting some free extra minutes. But if you guys have any questions out there, because I know we have a lot of people who are watching, just people are just silent in the chat room. I think you guys are just in awe. Ooh. Well, you guys potentially throw some questions out there. We will do the things that I purchased because they did let us go into the studio store and do some purchases. First off, I do have this hat that says Walt Disney Studios, Burbank, California. As you guys know, I wear a hat pretty much 24/7. So naturally, I didn't just buy one hat, but I got a second hat that says Burbank, California, the Walt Disney Studios since 1923. And if two hats wasn't enough, I bought a third hat. And this one here says the Walt Disney Studios, Burbank, California. And then I love the fact that they actually have the Dopey Drive and Mickey Avenue sign there. In addition to the hats, there was one other thing that I purchased, which would be this notebook, which I personally love. It's all ingrained. Is that the right word? I don't even know. But it's textured, so you can actually feel. So you get the water tower there. You get the studio. They get the studio sign. Then on the back, we actually have the building. We get the legend statue, and then it's really cool. Really, really cool. I absolutely love this. I collect notebooks because I do a lot of writing, and it came with a pen too. So win-win. Okay, but that's all I bought. Let's go to your questions out there. If you guys have any questions, we do have a few that are coming through here. How long did the tour take? So we had to get there at 9:30. Okay. Actually, this is going to be helpful. So if anyone out there ever wants to do this, the tour started at 9:30. We could get there as early as 9. We got there right at 9. We checked in. They said, if you want, there's a bathroom down this way. We went to use the bathroom. And then after we used the bathroom, they're like, then you can go look at the studio store for a little bit and try to shop around for what you might want at the end of the tour. So that's what we did. We went around there for a little bit. And then we said, can we go down that way? And they said, no, you're going to go there on the tour. So we kind of got stuck. But we got there at 9. We left around 12:30-ish. So I would say overall, the tour itself was probably about 2 hours. Our tour guide was fantastic. Absolutely loved her. She was extremely knowledgeable. She was very passionate. She said her mom actually used to work at the studio. So she was like, I grew up at the studio, and there were so many times where we would be someplace and she'd be like, oh, like I'm falling behind because I'm getting so caught up in the stories right now. So Frank pointed out halfway through, or afterwards, he's like, about halfway through the tour, you could tell that the tour was mainly just to me, because there were so many times where she's like, has anyone seen this movie? I'm like, yeah. And everyone else is like, no, I've never even heard of that movie. But it was a really, 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 really cool experience. Like I said, I've done this 3 times. I think this was the best one that I've done. Not to knock the other two. The other two were amazing too, but I think there's just, we went into more detail, and going into Walt's office was just the coolest thing. But yeah, I would say it was about 2.5, 3 hours. And then, you know what? Actually, we can actually look, because, you know what? No, even better. I can tell you exactly when that is, because I have my receipt for my purchase in the bag that came in. I can tell you exactly what time we exited, or maybe not. Does it have the time on here? 12:22. Yeah. So just about 2.5 hours it went through for the entire tour. But overall, amazing tour. Absolutely loved it. Insanely good. Keep on throwing those questions out there. If you guys have any more questions, we will go through and we'll answer more questions for about 5-10 minutes here, if you guys keep on asking them. About how far away is it from Disneyland? So it took us about an hour and a half to get up there. It is on the other side of LA. So Disneyland south of LA, this is north of LA. So it took a while, especially our tour started at 9:30, so we got stuck in morning traffic. On the way back, it only took about 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes for us to get back down to Disneyland after that. But yeah, it was a long drive, but in my opinion, totally worth it. Like if you're ever in Disneyland, and if you're a D23 member and you can see that these tour dates are available, and actually, you know what, let's do just for fun, as we will pull up this tour. We'll pull up the D23 app here, look at events, just so you can kind of see how often these tours are done. Now, one bummer with this tour is you can only sign up personally once a year, or maybe it's twice a year. I think it's only once a year. So if I want to go again, I just have to have someone else bring me to make life a little bit easier. So for the month of February, there's only 4 more days left of the month. There's the 22nd, 25th, 27th, and 28th. In March, there's the week from the 3rd to the 8th has 5 days available. The 17th to the 22nd has 4 days available, and then the 31st has 1 day available. So it's about every other week. It seems like they're doing these tours, and they do about 3 or 4 a day. So if you're in Disneyland at all, I do recommend that it might be worth checking out. We had one of the people with us said that he had just done the tour like a week or 2 earlier. He didn't seem very into it, so I don't know why he went twice. We're going to put this one up here. Oh, maybe not. Right here? There we go. Haha, our press pass. Not press pass. We're still trying to get a press pass. Lots of great information and pictures and purchases as always, Brandon. Thanks for sharing. No problem. Does anyone out there have any more questions before we wrap this bad boy up tonight? We went through a lot, and I feel like we didn't even cover all. There is so much to see, so much to do. I had an amazing time on this tour. Like, I really can't stress how much fun this tour was. Anytime you can go to a place that obviously I go to Disney World every day, and to go to a place where like it kind of all began is just a really cool experience. Now, the really cool thing is, here, let's pull up that other map here. The really cool thing is, if you have ever heard the story, and I know I've talked about it here, so most of you guys should know this story, but if you ever heard the story about how Walt Disney originally wanted to have it so there was going to be a Mickey Mouse studio, or I'm sorry, a Mickey Mouse park on his studio lot, it was literally just going to be this area right here. Everything else was still going to be studio, and that was going to be an amusement park. So as you can see, they didn't have a lot of room to work with, so it's a very good thing that they decided to go through and actually purchase the land and create Disneyland. Okay, but it looks like that might be all of our questions today. We've got a lot of people who are watching just in awe. Oh. But as always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. If you're one of our Patreon pals out in the chat room right now, give us an oh yeah. Thank you everyone out there for joining us once again this week. I hope you guys enjoyed our little recap of the Walt Disney Studios tour. As always, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe. And of course, as always, remember that anything can happen if you let it. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you all a little later. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Bye-bye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Are they gone? Are they gone? Good, my cheeks are just killing me. I can't stand this kind of pressure.